Back-to-back wins and never finishing lower than second in the past 4 races has boosted Trangrade within shouting distance of the points lead. Tixier's finishes have likewise been consistent, but he's thrown away potential wins in the process. Throw Togo into the mix, and the top 3 have all been neck and neck as we approach the finish line. How will Donington change the story? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 11 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is IMSA driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Robert O'Brien, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Another classic British circuit, this place throws plenty of challenges at the drivers. Let's take a closer look with our track guide. Welcome to Donington Park. This British track can boast the rare feat of hosting Grand Prix racing since before the advent of the modern F1 Championship. About a half-hour northeast of Birmingham, cars and bikes of many types have competed here. There are 2 layouts that can be driven: the Grand Prix version, which is roughly 2.5 miles, or the National Circuit, which is just under 2 miles. The only difference between them is the addition of the Melbourne and Goddard's hairpins at the end of the lap. This circuit is known for its fast, sweeping bends and difficulty in overtaking. There's also some extremely tricky blind apexes like at McLean's and Coppice. Ironically, one of the most famous and more difficult high-speed turns is called the Old Hairpin. Resembling nothing of its name, it includes a frustrating kinked entry and a very critical corner exit that leads to a long piece of uphill acceleration. The first turn of Redgate is a popular place for overtakes, but it carries an unusual danger. The pit exit empties right into the racing line, and if stops are expected during the race, it can prompt some treacherous exchanges. While the circuit is most well known for its extremely wet 1993 European Grand Prix, where Ayrton Senna blitzed the field for a win, currently the track is mainly used for lower-level open-wheelers and touring car racing. Overwhelmingly popular with British fans, Donington Park has established itself as a pivotal circuit in the UK racing scene. Well, Joey, this is certainly going to be a fun one, a fast and flowing track. It, usually sorts this car, but the elevation change is going to make it interesting.
Yeah, that's the tricky part with these cars always, is trying to put the power down and keep the wheels connected to the pavement. I like to kind of jump around a little bit, but I think the biggest and best passing opportunities here, potentially into turn 1, known as Redgate, and then through the trickier, slower speed sections of the chicane, the hairpins later in the track. But kind of this, like you said, this track does suit this car a little bit, kind of fast and flowing. I think it's going to be about minimizing the mistakes and staying on track with those wheels that stick out so far. Be careful with all the racers out there.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to try and make those passes. It's not narrow, but certainly difficult to try and get side by side. Now, as for the championship, like I said, things have closed down. It is a mere 11 points between Trangrade and Tixier. Ove finally took his first win, and then he backed it up to make it go 1-2 there for the last 2 races. Togo Hisada, unfortunately, been faltering a little bit, but not necessarily through his own fault in each time. Although last race, I think he kind of only has himself to blame for losing out on that one with 60 points to try and make up. But again, some of the drop points will help on that. He's not completely out of it yet. Very close battle down there between Zoko, Olsen, and Nieva. Look at that, just 10 points between 4th, 5th, and 6th. And then watch out for the battle between Rossi and Maudsley for 9th. Now, what about the F2 standings here, Joey?
You know, the F2 Points Championship has been so close for a handful of races now, and look at this, it has not changed. Although Robert Plumley trying to squeak away, only 9 points ahead of Terry Tromhauser right now. But check this out, Jonathan Jordan, Bjorn Ackerman only separated by 1. And then another battle here, Andrew Eng, Kurt Clapper, another separated by 2 points. Come back down here, Thomas Tuba, Mats Linden also in another battle. And what you don't see is actually 11th place, tied with Tobias Harnvey down there. So Jan Steffen, Mats Linden, all of these guys just keep the consistent finishes out there, and you can hop on up.
Then in the Cup of Nations, Singapore and Norway getting ever closer because of Ove's recent wins. The United States back 28 points off of Singapore, still very much in it, but they'll need some luck in the last two rounds. From there on down, it's much more of a longer shot or mathematically impossible for some of these countries to try and take it. But Germany and Australia only 10 points apart there for 8th and 9th. That one is definitely up for grabs here before we're done. Let's take a look at the race details for the event, though.
Starting to wind down this season, round 11 of 12, going to be doing 27 laps here at Donington Park Circuit. As always, it is an open setup, but talk to the community, join the forums over there. They love to share the setups, get everybody up to speed. No spare car, so if you pick up any damage, you're going to have to live with it. And then standard for this series, penalty at 17x of a drive-through and a disqualification at 25. Now, you can run off track quite a bit here, Joe, but usually we see that the damage comes first rather than the incident limits.
Yeah, they don't have much of a runoff before you run into either grass or gravel, that is for sure. As it looks like John Olsen's going to be our first driver to set a time in qualifying. But Topi Kortaniemi has returned, and he is going to be quick here ahead of Ove Trangrade by 7/10 of a second on that first lap. And then now Hisada manages to bump up into second as the times start to trickle in. But we watch with Topi Kortaniemi, who unfortunately has had to miss stuff a few times, a few weeks because of the Finnish championships.
Yeah, but, as soon as he's back on track, it looks like he has picked it up right where he left off. And I'm extremely impressed because Hisada usually like a rocket in qualifying, laying down those laps. And here's Topi, a full 6/10, or I should say half a second ahead.
Now, if you're a longtime viewer of this series and you're just coming back, you might be wondering, where is Mick? Well, interesting that you should say that. We have a series called Where is Mick? Because he's been traveling around the world, and while we've had a full season of him attempting that, unfortunately he got set back. The cool news is he's been trying it again, and we've been teasing a little bit of that, and we actually will have a special interview with him from abroad. He's going to be joining us post-race, so stick around for that special showing here in a moment. So we won't see Mick Claridge on track, but we will be talking to him a few times in the near future. So Topi Kortaniemi here comes across and impresses with an even faster time at a 26.7. Togo Hisada, a 27.4, still way off of Kortaniemi. Who can touch him today?
Trangrade right there in position number 3, but just as I say that, Sebastian Tixier jumps up to the front row, 127.3, but it still remains Kortaniemi, the only car in 126 range.
Tixier getting closer, but yeah, it seems like a lot of drivers struggling to even get anywhere near Topi today. And Xavier Sanchez is going to come around. Now, he's been quick lately. Let's see what his second lap is like as he comes down to the line. 28.1, that's not going to do it. He's still only in 6th position, and just a handful of other drivers able to set a time here in the last 2 minutes. Also worth noting that this is a special event for these drivers for another reason, not just having that interview with Mick later on. This is the 300th official GPL broadcast that we are doing, official broadcast to championship race for this series. It's been a lot of years and it's been a lot of fun, but I'm sure this is going to be special for somebody who winds up on the top, and it does look like Topi's in a good position to do that today.
Joe, I feel kind of spoiled coming in here and doing this 300th show with you guys because I'm still relatively new to this series, but it shows how long you've been around, how long you've been covering this series, and it really is very impressive.
And I haven't been around for every season. There was a period of time when I was in Colorado. It was a little early in the morning for me. I needed a little break. But I've been around for most of them, even if it hasn't been all. And Jorge Nieva coming around on, well, no, he's taken his 2 laps. Looks like his second lap was his only one that was counted. Good enough for 10th place. And I think that might be everybody able to set a time. So our grid is pretty much set. And as I said, Topi Kortiniemi, the quickest up here, the only driver to manage to crack into the 26s, takes the pole. Sebastian Tixier is second, and Togo Hisada will start from third. Then it's Ove Trangrade, P4. John Olsen will be fifth, and Xavier Sanchez, P6. Antti Lepisto will start from seventh position, followed by Gary Ho to his outside. Then in row 5, it's going to be Ben Zocco, followed by Jorge Nieva.
Here in row 6, we have Maximilian Senna Muller, and then in 12th place, Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado joining him. Laust Olsen in 13th. David Rossi 14th. Matthew Maudsley rounds out the top 15. Steve Morris here in 16th position. Seamus Power in row 9 alongside Bill Tyler in 18th. Robert Plumley 19th, and Bjorn Ackerman in 20th position.
21st is Tobias Harnvey with Michael Grissinger in 22nd. Then it's Christo Chinmai in the 23rd position. Terry Traumahauser in 24th. Quarter century goes to Nicholas Morelli, followed by Jonathan Jordan next to him. Then on the inside of the next row, it's John Stephen with Andreas Bruno in 28th. Andrew Ang will start 29th. Last driver to set a time was Timothy Porter in 30th.
And then back here we have Jeff Saunders in 31st. Kaj Hansen, Mason Grigel, and Robert Reynolds are going to round out the 34 cars that are going to be taking the grid here today.
All right. What kind of race are we going to get for the 300th official broadcast championship race? 82 Fahrenheit on the track. That should be right in the Goldilocks zones for these drivers. Not too hot, not too cold to get them up to temperature. It's a little cloudy out, but I mean, it is the UK, so we kind of expected that if we're honest.
It is, but hey, it is summertime. But one thing I'm noticing, Joe, check out at the back of the screen, the end of the grid wrapped around this corner.
Yeah, that's going to be tricky for sure, having to start on a very sharp curve. Usually we don't see them having to make quite that sharp of a standing start. There are some tracks where we see them having to try and steer the wheel. Yeah, that is going to be mighty tricky. At least it's at the very back where they'll probably get opportunities on the first lap to make some overtakes anyways, if we're honest. But let's hold out and wait to see what we get when that green flag falls, as we're still waiting on a couple drivers. Antti Lepisto, one of those that still needs to put himself on the grid. And it looks like he is out there now. So are we still waiting on the last two here? Looks like we are. Back row Bob and Mason Grigiel still looking to put themselves on the grid. They've got a few seconds left, so they might have to start from pit lane here. And it ticks down to 0. Indeed, they will. That means the engines will start to rev as the lights come up. And the green flag is out. Accelerating down towards Redgate. It's not that great of a start here for Topi Kortiniemi initially, but now he really gets going. And down to the inside, Togo Hisada knows what is at stake. He needs to try and make up some points. He's on the attack on Sebastian Tixier, and they're going to be side by side down through the Craner curves. Who is going to come out ahead? It looks like Hisada is going to get it.
Hisada will jump up into P2 and look at the field funnel through the elevation in these sweeping corners that we mentioned. All heading out here. Looks like we got a problem-free start.
Excellent to see as they now head up into McLean's. And now we've got a problem with Ben Zocco off track, way off track out into the weeds. Hasn't hit anybody. It looks like he'll be able to calmly feed back into the field, thankfully. But up at the front, it is currently Kortiniemi, Hisada, Tixier, your top three as they head into the newer sections of the track.
And Trangrade trying to get a look at, trying to peek at something around Tixier here. As you see, they try to avoid those bollards in that chicane there. They're just kind of a nuisance in the middle of the track, if you ask me.
The good news is here on iRacing, they're basically invisible, so you don't hurt the car by hitting them. Difficult moment back there as drivers struggling to get the power down off these hairpins.
I was watching Ove Trangrade really struggle trying to put the power down in that fourth place position. He's got John Olsen right behind him, as well as Antti Lepisto. Kind of two hungry sharks lining up behind the number 5 car.
Top 3 running away a little bit. Yeah, Ove maybe struggling a little at the start as John Olsen being chased by Antti Lepisto here, trying to see if he can get by. I do see, looks like back row Bob had to join late, unfortunately, and he's going to go a lap down early, so he must have had some connection problems, unfortunately, as we continue to watch Ove, who is so close to potentially taking the lead of this championship, see Sebastian Tixier slip away. That's the next car ahead. He needs to try and keep hold of him.
Now, to talk a little bit about the championship, we've seen this driver, number 7, Togo Hisada, have some really, really fast speed, but we've also seen some mistakes between Hisada, Tixier, the front of this field, so I wouldn't count Ove out of it just yet. We're still warming things up out here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Both of his wins kind of came when the other drivers faltered, as we got a problem with Bill Tyler here off the course down, looks like towards the Fogarty S's. And, oh, that car, yeah, it's crabbing bad. He's going to have to park it, unfortunately.
That's exactly what happened here with Bill Tyler. As we come up over the crest here, see if anything happens in front of him. Just trying to put the power down. Ooh, yeah, looks like a little bit of wiggle in front of him. Caught him out, and then he himself loses it into the wall.
And you're on the throttle there coming out of Coppice. And it's just a long, long right-hand turn. So I'm sure it was already on the limit of grip. And unfortunately, that has sent him down into pit lane, it appears. So back to Sebastian Tixier, now already 2 seconds behind Cortiniemi and a second behind Hisada. I wonder if he had an issue that last lap or if this is the top 2 starting to really unleash the speed.
Well, I think that Ove Trengrade actually picked it back up is what we're seeing, because you're right. Cortiniemi and Hisada both in 127s, but Trengrade also in a 127 after that little early slip up out of the number 5 car. So I think Ove's got it pointed the proverbial right direction now.
He's still within a second of Tixier, so he has not lost the hunt yet as they come down to the chicane once again. This is the section that was added much later in the life of this track to try and entice Formula One, and it did briefly in the 90s, but they tried to get him back again in the mid-2000s, and unfortunately were unable to. Still, a lot of improvements were made to this circuit that you see to this day, and we get to reap the benefits here in the sim as they complete lap 3.
Putting the power down, coming down the front straightaway, another fastest lap from our leader, 127.432. However, compare that to second place, Togo Hisada, 127.47. So I think we've definitely got a race between our top 4, I would say.
Togo's responding and is trying to make this a battle up at the front. Don't need to go to it, but Michael Grissinger had a spin at the back of the field. He gets the car going. That was out of the final turn at Goddard's. As checking back in with Nieva here, exactly where he started this race, in 10th position. That's Gary Ho in front of him. Gary, most well known perhaps for the fact that he is one of the other 2 drivers that adds to the Singapore points here, mainly obviously Sebastian Tixier, but every once in a while, Gary, as you can see, a top 10 driver, ready to try and see what he can add to the tally.
Speaking of Gary, he actually had a good qualified up in the 8th position, trying to hang on to 9th right now, but yeah, Jorge Nieva also right there, putting the pressure on the back of him, and we're used to seeing Jorge Nieva kind of hang out sometimes here in this mid-pack and sometimes right up at the front.
Absolutely. Jorge used to be an F2 driver and graduated out of that class, as that's a very good exit coming out of Melbourne. He's going to try and take a look into Goddard's, and he's got the inside. There's quite a crest there, as you can see it dip down, and off the corner, it's a drag race as they head to Redgate.
This is a potential passing opportunity, but Gary Ho lifts off the throttle, gives the position to Jorge Nieva. So move Jorge up into the 9th spot, and now he's going to look down to track down Maximilian Mueller and Xavier Sanchez, the 2 cars in front of him.
Indeed. And you hear us talking about that F2 championship as we check in with Lepisto, chasing on John Olsen. That is, all these cars are the same. These are all the same spec of a Lotus 49. It's just the only differentiation is the iRating of the driver. So that's how you graduate, is once you crack above 2,500 iRating, you get promoted up. And Nieva actually won that F2 championship previously. Since then, has come very close to getting wins and has had multiple podiums here in the Grand Prix Legends. So definitely worthy of that graduation. And things are getting very close here between Lepisto and Olsen. Olsen just covering it slightly, but then comes back to the racing line. Lepisto manages to get the overlap down to the hairpin, and they go side by side. Number 2 car gets it.
Yeah, but let's see if Olsen fights back in this next hairpin here. Does he himself go late on the brakes? Room given between both competitors at the previous corner, but you're right. The number 2 Lepisto claims that top 5 position.
So that moves him up there to P5 with about 2.5 seconds to train grade. Top drivers really running away from the field, but also not seeming to catch each other as much as we saw for a brief moment. It's still about a second apart between a number of them. We've got an incredible battle going on in the mid-pack, though. Salgado in the number 14 with Gary Ho, Steve Morris, and Matthew Maudsley. David Rossi was in there, but he unfortunately just went off track moments ago and lost about 5 places.
Well, you mentioned these names. I really think it starts with Jorge Nieva and then goes all the way back to Robert Plumley. I think there's about 8 cars involved in this train, and you're right, only about maybe 5 car lengths each separating them.
So tight together. Everybody's going to have to mind their P's and Q's here as they come out of Coppice down onto Starkey Straight. Another spot where you can see the rise and fall of the track, and these things getting very light, but thankfully everybody is able to keep it on the racing surface for now. No change of position in this train since that problem for Rossi, except maybe behind them. I see Plumley trying to make a move on power at the back of this group, and he's going to be able to get side by side. We've seen this story before. Oh, the 12 loses grip.
It can be really tricky putting the power down with these, keyword Joe, old tires and the big motor in the back of it. We always see not only the power down, but even the upshifting first to second gear can cause issues sometimes.
Yeah, but these old tires are putting on a great show, I got to admit, as Max Mueller here up in 8th position is trying to see if he can move to 7th. That's Xavier Sanchez just in front of him. Sanchez has been hovering around the podiums lately. I think he's taken 2 wins so far from what I've seen. And up into the braking 4 McLeans, both of them trying to spot that apex as they accelerate off, keeping it just within the bounds.
Now, I did hear you say McLean's here, and I know that it is spelled differently, so it is not named after John, huh?
No. Nor Don, I believe. But as they come down into the Fogarty S's once again, you can see those bollards. Yeah, the cars can just go through it, so don't worry. Through the magic of sim racing, they just evaporate through them without damaging the car. And down into the Melbourne hairpin once again. That's been a popular spot for the overtakes, but it seems to carry on, even if it does start there.
Yeah, and it's all about sticking close through here, through this hairpin, because we've noticed so many cars have problems putting the power down, but it looks like Sanchez and Mueller both able to put all of those horses to the ground, and now into turn 1, known as Red Gate. Then it's those fast flowing corners, kind of up and down a few hills, and more along for the ride at this point.
Absolutely. It's so scary in this car, I can tell you, having raced here in this series and years prior. And the car really wants to get away from you with all these fast turns, having to be oh so careful, dancing it around the apexes, especially up here as this curved braking certainly puts you under pressure to try and maximize it as much as you can without losing the grip, and little off the apex there, unfortunately. So not quite going to have the opportunity this time for Mueller, but he's sticking with it.
Joe, it reminds me a lot of, I wouldn't say the racetrack reminds me of Goodwood, but what we're seeing here, and when we see the old vintage cars be able to slide around, given that they have so much room off track if anything goes wrong, and it's kind of what I'm noticing here, plenty of room to really move the car around.
Definitely. It's like I said, a fairly wide track, especially in some places. So they've got opportunities.
It looks safe,
Yes.
is what it looks like.
Yeah, like I said, that when they were trying to lure F1 back in, they did a lot to try and update the facilities so that it matched that FIA Grade 1. And even though it didn't, it definitely is a track where you can get away with a few things. Not always, as we've seen a few drivers already have some issues, but enough that it's at least a little bit fun without feeling like you're going to lose a leg or an arm. As we check in with Matthew Maudsley here, and this is a battle for 13th with Steve Morris just in front of him. That group has broken up significantly. They used to be all on top of each other.
It's broken up a little bit. Now there's a gap between Steve Morris and Gary Ho, which is right in front of the car we are watching. So I feel like maybe Steve Morris is kind of being the cork in the second half of the bottle here, but Matthew Maudsley trying to get around. But check this out. David Rossi also right there. Robert Plumley still the caboose on the train. So I think that all of these are still players.
Indeed. So let's stick with this for at least a little bit here. This could erupt at any moment here. Mid-pack battles always some of the best that you're going to see in this series as they plunge down into the chicane once again. And also want to remind those that missed our pre-race show, don't forget, we have a special interview with Mick Claridge from on location, I guess we should call it, going to be talking to us and telling us a little bit about how he's doing out there and kind of teasing us a little bit into season 2 of Where is Mick. So definitely stick around after the checkered flag is out, because we're going to have a wonderful little chat with Mick Claridge out where he is currently. Matthew Maudsley, though, not even worried about that at the moment. More worried about what's in his windscreen with Steve Morris leading the way. A little bit of lack of traction off of Redgate there for the number 16.
Well, and we're not even halfway through the race yet, so that lack of traction that you're just now mentioning, it's going to get worse and worse and worse as the laps go on. And another part of this battle that we've been watching, Laust Olsen, I'm impressed with, Joe. Laust already up 3 positions, and we saw Jorge Nieva get around to the front of this train. Well, guess what? Laust Olsen is not letting Nieva get away.
Indeed, we ride on board with the man that usually gives us a camera feed here. Number 10, appropriately sitting in 10th with a bit of a moment there as he tries to get on the throttle onto Starkey's straight and down through the chicane. He is currently hunting down Nieva in front of him, who's losing touch with Max Mueller by quite a significant gap there. It's about 4.5, 5 seconds really up ahead.
Yeah, and you see the concentration in Laust Olsen's face. I mentioned he's up a few positions from where he started, hanging out right now in the top 10, but I'm sure he's looking to keep on moving forward.
Also, credit to Max Mueller, number 18 on his car. That's usually, for those that don't know, your I rating determines what number you are in the group. So he is 18th highest, yet he's running in 8th today. So he's punching above his weight class and being able to really step it up here. We'll see if he gets some I rating from that today as we continue to watch down through what is labeled the old hairpin. I've never understood this. I've even gone back and looked at maps, Joey. It was never what qualifies as a hairpin, but it's always been called the old hairpin. I don't get it.
You know, track names are sometimes a mystery. I don't know if you've been watching any of the Formula One coverage from Monaco this weekend, but they've been talking about the Nouvelle Chicane that isn't very new.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's sometimes they do get stuck that way. But that one, at least, at one time, it was the new chicane when they adjusted it. I think it was 84, 85 when it was changed around. I'll have to check. But yeah, still, someone out there who knows why it's called the old hairpin, please educate me on that one, because that one has baffled me for years now. As we continue to watch Laust Olsen still hunting down up at the top, though, you can see Topi Kortaniemi has taken the fastest lap of the race. He's only been able to stretch to about 1.5 seconds ahead of Asada, so he isn't that much faster, but he's been keeping him at arm's length here, Joey.
kind of even distance between the front three, and then Trengade has fallen off the pace a little bit, but there's enough gap between our front three that they aren't really racing. I think the closest battle is actually Maximilian Mueller on the back of Xavier Sanchez, and the reason why I say that, Joe, is Sanchez really seems to be struggling on his tires compared to the number 18 car, so I feel like maybe Maximilian's getting to Xavier a little bit. Here it goes. Here's a move.
Yep, there it is on screen now as they come up into Coppice. That is a hard place to make a pass, surprisingly. He cuts back and just chops off Sanchez before he can respond. He's going to look around to the right-hand side, but I think he's a little too far back here as they hit the braking for the chicane. Nice opportunistic move there from Max, although Sanchez sliding it through the chicane got awful close to the gearbox.
Well, and you see Sanchez right here. I bet you we're going to watch him fall back even further. He's just really been struggling with the car and the tires. I just think he's overheated what's underneath him, and that really hurts when you're trying to get out of these slow corners.
Yeah, especially with how this car just has so much grunt and not much grip. You got to try and just ease onto that throttle, and he has abused them maybe a little bit too hard today. So down into Redgate, yeah, already you can see the distance as he's put himself about a half second away. Another little slide as he exits. Sanchez seems to have lost a little bit of that rubber underneath him. Biggest mover so far this race, though, is actually Jeff Saunders, well farther down, up 10 positions into 19th. Not seeing many up at the top end of the order that have made up many spots. The biggest is Max Mueller at up 4 positions. So seems like at the sharp end of the field, passing is at a premium.
It seems pretty consistent. I'm surprised there hasn't been more attrition. There's a few cars that aren't running anymore, but honestly, you look through the field, you're right. Jeff Saunders, our biggest mover. Other than that, our biggest one is Laust. Mueller, who's up 4. So Jeff Saunders taking that biggest mover crown.
Nicely done. So there's the lap comparison between Cortinemi and Hisada. And a little bit faster for Hisada at times. Just seems to be ebbing back and forth a little bit. And as we can tell in the big picture, 1 second, definitely a little closer than 1.7 where he sits now. So he is gradually losing out, and we have passed the halfway point of this race. So that does not bode well. Oh, we have had another car off. That is Laust Olsen and the yellow and blue machine that has suddenly found himself into the grass there at the hairpin.
Take a look at this replay here, and Laust actually loses it on entry here. I was expecting to see it get loose on exit, but look at this. Not even halfway through, the car is already spun 90 degrees, and he's trying to save it. Doesn't make any contact, but loses a ton of track position.
Thankfully, does not wind up in the middle of the track. Somebody else was off behind him. That was Jan Steven, and that is, I think, that is a lapped car. So he was probably just trying to get out of the way. In the meantime, back to David Rossi. I mentioned he had an off earlier. He's actually still up 1 from where he started, and that is Steve Morris directly in front of him right now. Whoa, big slide there.
Keep it on the racetrack, guys. Sometimes it's easier said than done out there, and they're all trying to keep the yaw angle to a minimum. Now, we always see the cars slide around. That's inevitable. They're going to move around underneath you, but it's about minimizing, or I should say, controlling how much angle you have in that yaw.
Exactly. And that corner Coppice, imagine like a miniature version of Big Red at Coda. It's basically that. It's very sharp at the top, not as sharp, but also crest right as you come up to it is way wide. It looks like Steve Morris might give this one up. No, he gets the traction off the corner much better than David Rossi, and he's not even going to get a chance down into Redgate. That was kind of surprising.
I would say the only benefit about blowing that hairpin, Joe, is that, yeah, you make the straightaway longer, which Steve Morris just found out. Not a bad defense.
Wider exit, you're straightened up a little bit quicker, I suppose, as David Rossi's going to have to try again a little bit later, coming under the bridge, which sadly is no longer there, at least in modern times. But in this version, they do still have it up here on the iRacing scan, and Steve Maurice is going to be able to remain ahead of his rival. Haven't missed anything up at the top, by the way. Courtney leads Hisada, leads Tixier. That's your top three, same as it has been since early on in the race. The big thing, though, is just the fact that Hisada is going to gain a few points on Tixier.
Yeah, when you look at the championship, and especially with only really one more race remaining, any points are valuable. But Togo, yeah, he's doing what he can. And you look back at this season, Joe, what Togo has done is shown us immense speed. At sometimes a little bit too much speed, but he's always been up at the front fighting for the wins.
A little wide here as Salgado's going to lose out to Gary Ho, who's definitely wheeling that machine. You saw him have to cross him up to try and save it through the chicane, and that's going to get him into P10. Next up the road is Jorge Nieva, who we were watching a little bit earlier. Now there he is right there. That shows you the distance between the two of them.
It can stretch out pretty quickly, can't it? Especially at these fast-flowing tracks, you get a little bit of clean air. You think about what's in front of you rather than the people chasing you, and all of a sudden, you lay down some nice sector laps. You look in the mirror, and they're nowhere to be found.
Always a nice sight, though, to have that clear mirror.
It is.
Not have any pressure, really focus on your own race. Up and over the crest, though, Gary Ho still has Salgado behind him, along with Steve Maurice, David Rossi, Laust Olsen, and Robert Plumley. So Laust has unfortunately gone out of the frying pan and into the fire a little bit. He slipped up and finds himself still in a battle, in the thick of a battle here as they fly through the latter end of the course, through the hairpins. Nobody looks close enough for a pass attempt this time, but we'll see who gets the traction.
And I know that you've mentioned Steve Maurice a couple times, Joe, and this is a really big race for him. He's sitting in 12th place right now, but he's in 11th in that F2 points championship, but he's technically tied for a battle right now, so this is a big one.
Oh, well, unfortunately, he might have just blown it a little bit. He goes wide off the corner again, and that does save him a little bit. David Rossi going to try and come back at him, and he's a lot closer this time, but still can't quite make the pass into Redgate. As what has happened to Mueller? All his hard work is undone, and he returns to the track in ninth. He only loses 2 places, but that's an unusual place to go off. What happened?
Take a look here at the number 18. Oh, just the tires gave up on him, and then great accident avoidance. I believe that was Sanchez right behind him. But Joe, I just think that we're starting to see the tires fall off more and more and more every lap.
Certainly seems like it. Yeah, you gotta protect those rears. It's not that hot of a day on the track. I wonder if he just burned them up right here. Watch this. Yeah, and they were still a little overheated, and unfortunately, the car just would not accept it.
Well, and Joe, we have to remember, too, that section of the racetrack is the first few of the flowing corners. What's right before that are slowest areas of the racetrack that if you overheat those rear tires with wheel spin, I don't think they're cooled down by that point.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's not that long of straightaways here, so easy to do that. Back to Laust Olsen. Here we go, trying to pass David Rossi as they work their way into the hairpin, and he overcooks it for the second time in this race, and Laust Olsen finds the familiar sight of the tire barrier.
Deja vu. I mean, that was a spitting image of what Laust Olsen did just a few laps ago, and unfortunately, it bites him again this time all the way down to 18th place.
Credit, though, that he once again did his best not to hit anybody in that situation. The sportsmanship in this series always astounds me. After 300 races, so many of these guys have been here for literally hundreds of them at this point, and have earned quite a bit of respect amongst each other.
Oh, 100%, and I don't mean anything bad on Laust, because what I liked seeing is that he was trying to move, and like you said, sportsmanship. Not only did he try a move, but he gave room. He spun himself. He got himself off of the racetrack. In my book, everything perfect from Laust Olsen there. Just a shame that it went around on him.
Trying to see here if we have a stats of number of starts, and interestingly, that's one that we don't have. Also, I do want to give a quick shout out in terms of these 300 starts for this series. Matt Wright is our stats man, so a huge tip of the hat to Matt. Thank you so much. Week in and week out, he gets those numbers updated for us, and they have been a huge help in the last couple of years.
And trust me, it is huge, Joe, because math on some of these drop weeks and different splits and everything, it can be super confusing. So yes, thank you.
As we come down into Red Gate once again and flying into that first corner, they're just going to go by Nicholas Morelli, who's been struggling a lot. I haven't been covering it, but he's had a number of offs this race. I think he's just trying to get to the finish here and salvage what he can. As we check in with Sebastian Tixier. Now, he has reeled in Togo Hisada. No surprise here. I think he knows what's at stake. He doesn't want to give him any whiff of a chance at this championship.
And I've mentioned it a few times. Togo Hisada goes through a few stages during the race. Like, in terms of his speed, sometimes it's a little lackluster. Sometimes it's the fastest car on the racetrack. I'm wondering if we're seeing fall off or if it's just kind of one of those stages from Togo.
Could be. They're going to go by another lapped car here with Cash Hansen. Going to stay off to the side. Still 24 cars on the lead lap out of this group. 34 starters. This is not a very long track. So this is going to get a little bit busy here at the end of the race where we're going to get more and more of this lap traffic. And maybe that could play a little bit of a part in it. But for now, Sebastian Tixier just has a head-to-head fight with Hisada for that P2.
And to put it into perspective, I know that they aren't like super close on the racetrack right now, but at one point, Sebastian Tixier was 2 seconds behind Togo Hisada, and now he's only about a half a second behind that number 7 car. So, yeah, for sure, this is closed up, and this is that podium fight.
And Ove Trangrade behind them has got to be thinking, ooh, this is good news for me, because now at least one time he got a win back at Imola when these two came together. So them starting to battle is nothing but good news, despite Ove being about 7.5 seconds behind. He could easily pick that up again.
That's the only caveat there is I totally agree. Those two fighting, it has produced tiers on the racetrack that Ove Trangrade has capitalized on before, but yeah, he's way far back, 7.5 seconds. I'm actually really impressed with how much these guys have stretched it out over Ove.
Yeah, I not even realized it until I looked back and said the number myself, so quite a bit of a distance.
That, but Courtney 4 seconds in front of this battle.
Yeah, he's been managing this one with a very cool aplomb there, that number 1 car. So it's looking like all he has to do is just manage this lap traffic, which he's got enough of a buffer. He doesn't have to hustle this too much, although he catches it an awkward spot. Jordan, who is the car in front of him right now, is going to pull off to the side. Nicely done there by the 22 and let him go. So there's one down for Courtney. Then Jan Steven and Terry Traumhaus are going to be the next ones up the way.
You talked about that sportsman. Oh, big moment from Togo Hisada there. You saw him just put that left rear tire on the grass on entry, and oh boy, Joe, it almost caught him out.
Yeah, he's got to really keep his wits about him here. There are no runoffs on the entries to these corners, so it's not like you can really push that limit too far, and we have seen drivers definitely slip off the road doing that in a couple recent series here on the channel. Togo Hisada still half a second ahead of Sebastian Tixier. He's ready to pick it up if there's another little problem like that for the 7 car.
Well, and not only that, but look directly in front. We're coming up to those lapped cars. There's the 22 of Jonathan Jordan, who got out of the way of our leader. We're going to come up to another one here, I believe. I can't tell who's pulling out of the way, but he does get out of the way of our leaders. Now it's just the 22 in front of him.
Oh, we've had a major incident with Steve Morris and I believe Matthew Maudsley. And this is after Steve Morris just went by Marco Salgado, who had his own little problem coming off of Coppice. There you can see he's going to outgun him. And Salgado will actually go off course, outbraking himself into the chicane. Now, is that related?
No, it's not. And so what happens here, Joe? Unfortunately for Steve Morris, he gets spun around here by himself, and then you gotta lock the brakes. He doesn't hold the pedals, and he rolls back. Watch this. He rolls back multiple directions and then catches cars out.
And I think that was Ben Zocco, unfortunately, it looked like. Got a big piece of him. And Ben's still running, but he's down to 13th now because of that one. And Sebastian Tixier has suddenly lost a ton of time. Has he now had an off? Let's see.
Yes. He was gotten by Jonathan Jordan, and I think he just got loose on entry here, Joe.
Koppes takes another victim. That has been one of the problem zones here on this track. He eventually waddles his way back onto the circuit, but the damage is done. That is way too big of a gap unless there's another slip up from the number 7. Seb basically has given up that second place.
Well, careful, Seb, because remember the name that we were just mentioning, Ove Trengrade. He capitalizes on these opportunities. He's only 2.5 seconds behind Tixier now, and if Seb is having some overheating problems, we'll have to keep an eye on those lap times.
Indeed. Yeah, Trengrade is one who relishes a battle and is going to be on top of that as we check in with Robert Plumley. That is David Rossi in front of him. And then they've got a big gap back to Zocco behind. So a one-on-one fight here between the 15 and the 17 with about 5 laps to go.
Trying to chase him down here. David Rossi, Robert Plumley. We saw Ben Zocco have those problems just a little bit earlier. He's trying to chase these two down, but Plumley up 7 positions. So Robert having a good race, trying to crack up in there into the top 10.
I honestly, watching these cars, especially from these lower angles around these fast turns, I kind of love watching them slide across the track, honestly. Just, it is almost graceful in a way, seeing how the drivers handle them right on the limit, especially right here, coming off of Koppes, nice and smooth. For Robert Plumley, no wheel spin that I could see out of him. Now down into the break into the chicane. Can he be a little bit better than some of the recent cars we've seen? That looks very tidy.
And Joe, I agree with you. I think what makes a race car fun to drive is character. And these things have a ton of character, having to really throw them around, having to understand the engine in the back of them. And in my racing career, that's what I loved out of the production sports cars that I drove. We had 3 pedals still in the car, an H-pattern gearbox. We didn't have traction control. Some of the cars had ABS, but it was all about managing those tires. And it's not like the tires that we have now. They really slid around underneath you.
Indeed, these things don't quite have the modern grip at all. You can see those groove tires. They were all-purpose tires. They were in rain or shine, and they actually, I think, lasted multiple races, if I remember reading correctly. So they would take them to more than one race.
Oh, for sure, and they were the best that we had for the time. And got problems on the racetrack there as those couple went by. But anyways, what I was going to say about those tires, it gives the character to the race car, and I think it just helps with the racing. We got some troubles here on the racetrack, a little bit of a traffic jam.
Yeah, all coming together all of a sudden here as they fly down towards the chicane, as Plumley going by Bruno, still chasing on David Rossi, but the traffic's not going to help him get that position this time behind them. I believe that's Ben Zocco still trying to play catch-up after his little scary moment through the chicane a few laps ago. Now he overtakes the lap traffic, hot on the heels of these two, wanting to make up for those lost spots.
Yeah, it's not over yet. Couple laps remaining, and my ADD brain is going here, Joe, with how much these cars are moving around. Have you seen the ice go-karting that takes place?
I have not. Who was that spinning back there? That was Cash Hansen we're hearing. So the 30 car getting it back onto the circuit. He's also been having a bit of a rough one, but as ice go-karts, that sounds like a wild time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty much like rallycross, but in a go-kart, like a 125cc kart and studded tires. And it very much reminds me of how these things are driven, that it's all about really snow and ice driving in those yaw angles.
Yeah, I'll have to look up some of that because that sounds pretty fun as we continue to watch Plumley here with Rossi in front. Now Zoko looking a lot quicker than these two. Let me see what the last laps are looking like. 28 flat for him. Yeah, 28.9 for Plumlee. So Zoko definitely a lot quicker. He does have these two positions on the card if he hustles.
And if I remember correctly, wasn't it Ben Zoko that went flying off the track lap 1? So he's climbed all the way back up here to this battle.
He did indeed, you're right. So nicely done here by Ben to try and recover. He's still down 4 from where he started, so he's got some more work to do, and I don't think he's going to get back to at least breaking even, but he can have some fun along the way. As way wide goes Robert Plumlee. We've seen this story before. Plumlee is going to get the better exit.
Yeah, Ben Zoko not going to be able to attack, but it does draw him a little bit closer. And just as I say that, look at Ben go all the way down to the inside late on the brakes. Robert Plumlee does give a little bit of room, but I think Ben realizes the time is starting to run out.
My goodness, that was shallower than a puddle at the salt flats. That was a very narrow entry that he had in there as Robert Plumlee is trying to hold him behind, but Ben Zoko doing everything he can to relieve him of that spot with 2 laps left as they get ready to crest into McLean's. Not close enough this time, not seeing anything into Coppice either as they're all smooth on the throttle. Let's see what the exit of Coppice holds.
Yeah, these 3 all locked in this position. I got my eye on Ben Zoko. I really feel like he's the fastest car of the 3 on the screen, but we've seen it all day long. It kind of stretches out through the twisty sections, and here comes the opportunity where a potential pass can be made.
As this is happening, white flag has come out for Topi Cortiniemi. One last one to go, and they're going to get that in just a couple corners themselves, this battle for 11th place, just outside of the top 10. As they fly into Goddard's, who can get the exit here? Will Plumlee keep it nice and tidy this time?
Oh, Zoko was the one who went in a little bit too deep this time, and kind of all stretches out as they take that white flag from Barney.
And we've had a lot of cars lapped now. It's only the top 18 on the lead lap. So these guys, as they are taking that last lap now, Cortiniemi is heading into the last hairpins himself. There he is. The Finn has not been able to show up consistently, but the former champion has returned and is going to show everybody just what kind of speed is still behind the wheel of this car. As the number 1 comes up to Goddard's, the 300th GPL broadcast race is going to go to Topi Cortiniemi here today at Donington.
What a victory from the number 1 car. You see the emotion from Cortiniemi, our winner. Togo Hisada does hold on to 2nd place, and I believe Sebastian Tixier will cross the line in our final podium spot.
Hisada 2nd, Tixier 3rd, Trangarade will wind up 4th. So that hurts his hunt on Sebastian Tixier just a little bit and puts him a little more clear. Xavier Sanchez trying to hold off Jorge Nieva. It's the battle of the Spaniards, but Xavier will win out. And then David Rossi finds himself still under threat from Plumlee and Zoko as there's a car off in front of him. That's not for position, and they're all going to get around cleanly.
They finish in that same order, Rossi, Plumlee, Zoko, as we watch a few more cars come across Marco Antonio Salgado in 14th.
That's going to wrap up our drivers as the last of them cross the line. Don't go away, because not only do we have our usual official results as well as driver interviews, but a very special interview with Mick Claridge is coming your way after the break.
you know what? I left on the 4th of May. Left London on the 4th of May, headed down to Dieppe, went to see no spoilers, Joe, went to see a very good old Formula 1 track. I won't say which one or anything like that, but it's coming up in season 2. And then carried on through France, through Germany, all the way down the River Rhine, now I'm in Danube, and I'm following it all the way on a route called the Sultan's Trail, and that heads all the way down into Turkey, and that's my route.
Oh, fantastic stuff. Now, I understand that things have changed a little bit because you were telling us about this new gal that you've got, but I understand that maybe you've already grown tired of her. What's going on here?
Have you got feed now? Can you see me?
Yeah, we've got you.
Yeah. Have you got video feed? Have you?
Yep, we can see you now.
Okay, cool. So I headed out on the bike and I got as far as Germany, and it's not a laughing matter really, but I nearly got killed by going under a truck, and I looked at myself and I just spanned the bottle of my little drinks bottle round, and I just thought, if that heads home, I'm going home and I'm going to rethink again, and it did. So I went home, rethought what I was going to do, and went back to basics, and I'll just show you what I've ended up with. It's just a 2-word answer really, Joe. Sally's back. Sally is back. There's for you.
Oh my goodness. Unfortunately, we did lose picture just as you said that, but that is so cool to know that Sally is back. She's obviously a big favorite here on your show here of Where is Mick, but man, it's kind of like old times, I guess you could say. The band's back together.
Yeah, the band's back together, man. Yeah, it's all going on. Yeah, I mean, I just looked at it and I just thought, well, I rode it to Turkey, rode her to Turkey, and everything was fine, and then I chopped and changed, the bike went wrong and stuff went happening, and it was all going wrong, and I just thought, let me just go back to basics again, and because I had all the trouble with my hands, and that's cleared up now, so yeah, I don't know if you got video feed again, but I can point it that way again if you have, but yeah, everything's fine now, done, getting on for over 1,000 miles again on Sally, and yeah, no problems whatsoever. Had one puncture in France, and that's it.
Yep, we've got video feed back now. Let us see you, the old girl.
There you go.
Amazing. Can she say hi?
Oh yeah, let me see. I don't know. She might be asleep. Hold on. Sally, you there? Sally. Hello everyone. Hello. Oh, I'm on video, aren't I? Yeah, you're on video, Sally. Say hi to Joe. Hi, Joe. Ask me a question, Joe. Ask me a question.
Oh, Sally, it looks like you're back in the saddle, and it seems like you're having a good time. Is Mick treating you well?
No, he never treats me well. He just abuses me every day, Joe. It's a nightmare. I can't stand it. I can't take it anymore. But we're getting by. We're getting by. It's not too bad.
Well, I mean, if he treats you badly, just smack him around a bit. You know how to keep him in line.
Well, I'm going to wait until I get to you, Joe, and then you can do that for me. You can give him a great big kick up the bum. Sally, calm down, man. Look, we're a team, We're a team, Sally. Come on. All right, Mick, don't worry. Yeah, let's keep it, keep it friendly, shall we, Mick? Yeah, that's it, yeah. You know your place, don't you, girl? You know your place. Oh, man, Joe. And Joe, let me ask you a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
In all the years you've been broadcasting, do you ever think you'd be interviewing a fat bike? She's not fat though. Don't call her fat.
I did not. She is as svelte as ever. Well, this has been one of the most unique interviews I think I've ever done. Mick, thanks for coming and talking to us. I cannot wait for season 2.
Cheers, mate. Season 2's coming. And let me just say hello to all the guys that are watching, all the people back home in London that are watching me and supporting me. There's a load of people that have supported this ride. And if you're any way on the route through America or anywhere like that, get yourself on my Discord, get signed up, and I'll get you a t-shirt to sign, iRacing t-shirt, you can be part of it.
Great stuff. That was Mick Claridge, who we can't thank enough for giving us a little quick interview here as he gets on the road once again to literally travel the world. And I think that's going to take us now to the actual results of the race. And thank you, everyone, for being patient as we get a quick chat with Mick there. And Topi Kortiniemi is going to take the win today as Togo Hisada was second and Sebastian Tixier was third. It was Ove Trangrade P4, followed by Antti Lepisto in fifth. John Olsen, kind of a quieter race. He eventually wound up sixth place ahead of Xavier Sanchez, who was chasing him at one point. He wound up seventh ahead of Jorge Nieva, who was eighth. Max Mueller, who was looking like he was going to gain a fair number of spots, slipped back down to ninth, and Gary Ho rounds out your top 10.
Then we have David Rossi, who's at that front of that three-car battle, comes home 11th. Robert Plumley 12th. Ben Zocco climbs back up after the early mistake to 13th. Marco Antonio Salgado in 14th. Seamus Power inside the top 15. Laust Olsen with those couple of spins finishes in 16th. Jeff Saunders in 17th. Tobias Harnvey 18th. Michael Grissinger and Terry Tromhauser in 20th.
And a lot of cars went a lap down. As I said, it's not that long of a lap here. Jordan 21st, Chinmay 22nd, and Ackerman 23rd. Then you've got Bruno and Morelli, last two, one lap down. Cash Hansen 26 with Ian Steven 27th. Back row Bob, unfortunately, got a slow start, didn't get out until already a lap down. He was 28th, 4 laps down. And then you get to our DNFs, unfortunately, from there on out at the back of the field. Not as attrition-filled as many expected there at the start. Thankfully, it was a slow time before we saw some drivers wind up off the track. But one driver that kept it planted and on the racing surface was Topi Kortiniemi. Topi, I don't know if you were paying attention to any of these things, but it is apparently the 300th broadcast race of the Grand Prix Legends Series, and you are the victor today. Congratulations.
Thanks, Joe. I wasn't aware, but nice. And hey, Mick, I saw your interview, a part of it.
Yeah, Mick stepped aside for a little bit, although he is hanging around in the background with us here. But Topi, that looked pretty straightforward to us. You didn't finish super miles ahead of everybody, but about 9 seconds. Did it feel pretty easy on your end?
Yeah, I was just taking a little cautious, especially with the lappers, because it's a hard track to pass. You're pretty much on the limit after the red gates all the way to the back straight. So I was just taking it cautiously, but otherwise pushing as hard as I could.
Now, we understand that the Finnish championships kind of pulled you away a little bit. Does this mean you're back for good, or did you just have a break in the action?
I might have a few races in the next month, I think, but then it's mostly preparing for the finals. That's in the start of August.
So still a little bit more to go for you, so maybe it'll be in and out. But hopefully that means, I guess, that we'll see maybe a little bit more of you next season. I think, no, actually, August will be another 3 months. Wow. Okay, so maybe it won't be next season. Regardless, is there any track in particular that you're really hoping maybe that you can get out for once we release next season?
Bathurst comes to mind, and maybe Nords. Any old school track, really, like Mid-Ohio, not the modern ones.
Well, I'd say you definitely bruised some egos here today, because Hisada, Tixier, Trangrade have been miles ahead of everybody, and you basically stomped them. So congratulations on that win and an impressive performance, sir.
Thanks, Joe.
That was Topi Kortiniemi, our winner here. And unfortunately, it looks like we won't get to talk to anybody else. We haven't had anybody step in. So that's going to wrap us up today with a big thank you to the Grand Prix legends for an amazing 300 racing. Here's to 300 races. Here's to 300 more for the community. Can't thank you enough. And thanks to the team today, Rob, Joey, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe to it here on GSRC, because the next race, the finale, is going to be at Spa. What a fitting finish. That'll be Saturday, June 3rd at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Be sure to check out our other broadcasts, because we have the Camel GT Series at Silverstone at 1 p.m. Eastern this afternoon. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.